LGBTQ+ in Schools panel series, a collaboration between the National Black Justice Coalition and the Black Educators Initiative at Urban Teachers. This is the first of a 3-part web series designed to advance conversations about what Black, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, same gender loving, and other sexuality and gender expansive young people need in order to thrive. In today's Youth Perspectives panel, we will hear about what schools get right about thriving, how they get in the way, and what can be done moving forward to meet young people's needs. I am joined today by a truly extraordinary group of experts, and it gives me immense pleasure to introduce them to you now. Justin Calhoun is a Howard alum with an impressive student leadership and community organizing background. At Howard, Justin led the coalition of activist students celebrating the acceptance of diversity and equality, also called Cascade, helped to establish the university's first queer studies course, and testified before Congress about Black queer youth needs. Justin has worked at the National Black Justice Coalition, the Human Rights Campaign, and GLSEN, and currently serves on the inaugural National Black Justice Coalition Youth and Young Adult Action Council. Justin is joined today by Sage Dolan Sandrino, founder and creative director of Team MAG and a member of the National Black Justice Coalition's inaugural Youth and Young Adult Advisory Council. After being scouted by Gucci in 2018 for the fashion film, The Future is Fluid. It's a lot of fuss. Sage was invited to serve as an advisory board member to the brand's Chime for Change campaign for global gender equity. Audience members may recognize Sage also from her regular appearances across popular and social media as an ambassador and change agent in the quest for intersectional justice. Sage and Justin are joined by Gabriella Gabby Hall. Gabby is a third-year student at City Polytechnic High School with a passion for architecture, arts, and design. Wisely, Gabby's main goal in life is to be happy and to live life the way God intended her to. The causes closest to her heart include Black Lives Matter and women's rights, movements for which she is an outspoken advocate. And Justin, Sage, and Gabby are joined today by Dylan Hughes, a student at San Francisco State who writes spoken word and poetry in his free time. Dylan is committed to supporting others as they navigate challenges, calling on his own experiences and the empathy they have deepened in him. He's had trouble in the past with self-love and self-worth and identity, like many of us, but has found ways to uplift himself and to help others do the same. And I'm Dr. Kia Darling-Hammond, Director of Education Programs and Research at the National Black Justice Coalition. I'm your facilitator for the evening. Please join me in welcoming this esteemed panel. Let's begin. Okay, so I am so happy to be here with y'all this evening. It's an absolute honor. I'd like to get us started with this question. And Justin, I'm wondering if you'll get us going with the first response, and anyone else can chime in. We're here today to talk about thriving as a Black, trans, queer, non-binary, or same gender loving student or young person. When you think about people, past or present, who shape your thinking about this, who are they? Who is entering this conversation with you?
Yes, thank you, Kia. Very glad to get started. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the kind words. So when I think about it, the people who I'm bringing with me, which were very imperative to my own thriving, through K through 12, I'm bringing actually the teachers who were there to affirm me, who were there to provide educational opportunities, and who were really there to shield me from an environment of violence and homophobia that was very prevalent in the Mississippi Delta. That's where I'm from. I'm from Rouville, Mississippi, born and bred, home of Fannie Lou Hamer. But as you know, or as y'all know, Mississippi is Black, Southern, very homophobic, very violent. And so I'm bringing all those teachers with me who saw the conditions that we were living in and really wanted more from me. I can pass it to Sage if that's fine.
Yes, thank you, Justin. Hey, y'all, my name is Sage, and I use she, her pronouns. I would say, I think this is a very easy answer. I'm gonna say David Johns, because I know that might sound like, oh, like the executive director, but I came out publicly because of David. When I was 15 years old, I was invited to a summit that was hosted by National Black Justice Coalition and at the time, the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans, which David was the executive director of as well. And I remember he asked a question. He said, what do our trans students need from teachers and staff people? And I didn't have anybody that really affirmed me in high school. I was that person. And I remember I raised my hand and he handed me the mic and I gave my answer. And it was the first time that I realized that I ever came out as trans to a room full of people, but also to the people who were there from my school. And I didn't even realize what I had said until I'd sat down, and 3 minutes later, the live tweet deck behind him had my picture and a quote. And I felt seen, I felt scared, but I also felt a weight lift off of my chest. And that's what really allowed me to thrive. There was not a freedom that I had felt like that in a long time. And to reclaim my transness was incredibly powerful. And it was difficult, but it really did allow me the experience that I needed to thrive in high school. So yeah, that's my answer. I'll pass it to Gabby.
Thanks, Sage. Hi, everybody. My name is Gabby. And the way I feel about this question, growing up Black and Caribbean, I feel like it wasn't always normalized or like talked about to be gay, anything outside of what society standards. So I feel like growing up not knowing about it and then all of a sudden coming to school and it's 2021, so we're learning about all these new things, all these new experiences, and then at one point in time I felt like I had to put a label on myself. I had to put myself in a box, and I felt like I also had to deny these feelings, and I couldn't fully be myself to everyone because we live in a violent and homophobic world that where people don't want to see you win. And I feel like when I got to high school, the people surrounding me and the teachers there, I feel like they also helped me on my journey to figure out who I am, because I realized that Gabby can be anybody. She can be gay, she can be bi, she can be anybody that she wants to be. Sexuality is fluid, and we need to stop normalizing that you need to put yourself in a box. So I feel like the teachers in my school, since they especially made a day where it is safe to come out to you, and since they also keep it very confidential, I feel like they've helped people. Especially me, they've helped you discover who you are, or if not, they helped you down your path of self-discovery. So that's what I feel like. So I'll pass it off to Dylan now.
Thank you. I think in order for me to thrive, I think I was like a little bit far behind because it didn't really happen until my ending of high school years of my junior and senior year. Because I think in middle school for me, I think it was hard for me to thrive because in middle school, you were kind of trying to figure yourself out, but also trying to appease for others. And for me, I was in that state of mind where I was having so much going on mentally that I didn't actually put time for myself to figure out who I was. And so I think when I did coming and entering into high school, what my teachers did was, and I want to jump off of what Gabby said of, you don't know like about the LGBT community because I think these dominant notions and these dominant genders, they try to hide it from you because they feel it's such a bad thing. But thanks to my school, my teachers knew something about me. And for one of my papers that I had to write, he thought, you should write something about the LGBT. And I said, I don't know what the T stands for. And the more I did research, the more I figured out, okay, that resembles me so much. And that was the same teacher who ended up paying for my hormones and just being there for me by my side. And I felt I was going to take what he did for me and do it for others.
It's so beautiful to hear about, and I hope the audience is picking up on the critical importance of teachers and mentors. I certainly bring a number of my teachers and mentors into this space with me, people who've trained me as a scholar, people who help me see myself clearly and honestly. And so I'm so thrilled to hear that that's been the experience for you as well. And Gabby, I wonder if you could get us started responding to this next question, which you've already touched on, and I'd love for you all to elaborate. How did or do your identities as being both Black and trans, queer, non-binary, same gender loving plus shape your experiences in grade school?
Personally, for me, I feel like in my school, where it's becoming globally accepted, but at the same time, there's still some people who are always iffy on it, and people who like claim to be supportive, but then their actions just contradict their words. I feel like it's never affected my learning personally or my experience in school, and I feel like a lot of people have been very open about it now that it's becoming more normalized. That it's okay, it's not a disease, it's not a mental disorder. I feel like the more we educate our people, the more that it becomes normalized. So the more it becomes okay, which it shouldn't have to be a debate on whether it's okay or not, because I am who I am. Everybody's who they are. They can love who they love. And that's nobody else's business.
I can go next. I think, well, unfortunately for me, it was not a great experience being both Black and queer, Black and LGBTQ, especially like in the Deep South, in the Mississippi Delta. Often what would happen was that my Black identity was acknowledged, it was embraced, because I mean, it was a bunch of Black people. So they understood that part. But when it came to queerness, to LGBTQ stuff, it was not acknowledged, embraced. I was actually shamed and bullied by teachers themselves, like actual educators. People who, my mom is also an educator. She's an administrator, principal, like assistant superintendent, all of that. And so everybody always knew her. And they would even like tell her sometimes, like, oh, your son hangs around like too many girls. So like educators definitely got in the way of my LGBT, like my queer identity, really thriving. It was kind of a traumatizing point in my life, especially like during middle school. So it wasn't the best moment for me.
I'll also jump in to Gabby's point. You know, growing up Caribbean, I'm Cuban, so that's my Caribbean connection. And Cuba actually has a really, really rough history surrounding queerness. And gay folk were actually round up and placed on rafts and sent to sea to die as a part of the um, country's way of dealing with what they saw as a mental health crisis, right? And I think that that definitely influences a lot of the ways that my Cuban family think in some ways about my transness. But also, you know, Spanish is an incredibly gendered language. So that kind of also influenced the kind of traumas that I went through transitioning and communicating with my family. Um, but when it comes more to the to the school aspect, because I did transition in middle school, I transitioned in not like, you know, my schools were not necessarily religious schools. I didn't go to a Christian school, I didn't go to a Catholic school, but a lot of the people who were in my school community did use kind of religion against my transness. And I do remember the Westboro Baptist Church actually came and protested my school. I went to Duke Ellington in Washington, D.C., and we are known for being a art school and being, you know, queer welcoming. But I was also a very visible queer student who publicly went to Duke Ellington. And I just remember being so surprised that like this group of people came from outside of town to really like stand in front of our school and tell us that we're going to hell and stomp on our flags and things like that. And I experienced trans-related violence outside of school and inside of school. I was lured down to the locker rooms in freshman year, and I was brutalized by a male student. And while I was bleeding and my blood was literally covering the floor, like he said, "Oh, that's okay because that's a man." You know, and that was something that the students found funny. That was something that the students accepted as an excuse. And I ended up apologizing to that boy. So although we had a kind of accepting school, there was definitely an undertone of hate and violence that 100% influenced my experience as a trans woman in school. So yeah, that's my experience.
Okay. Um, I think for school wise, I feel that school is everybody's second home because that's where you spend most of your hours and days of the week, and that's where you create this second family and all these friends that you have. But I think I had my first taste of kind of transphobic and homophobia from one of my teachers actually, and like I said, I had issues of trying to find self love and self confidence because in the midst of finding yourself, I was a sixth grader with a history teacher who decided to go against school, and we weren't a religious school, but she decided to scare us into religion. Instead of learning about history, she would teach us, if you don't abide by what God says, you're going to go to hell and you're going to rot. And it scared us because we were still young and we would believe her. And me standing out, I didn't dress feminine or act feminine as I was supposed to. She felt the need to tell me to get my hair done and wear skirts and dresses. And at the time, I couldn't stand up for myself because this was an adult and I didn't have a voice of my own. And I ended up talking to her as soon as I graduated. And I found out, I feel more masculine than feminine. And I told her, which resulted into a 2-hour conversation of her yelling me, telling me I'm supposed to serve man, that being trans is not okay. And entering high school, that's how I felt. I felt as if I was kind of disgusting in a way, and I just didn't want to be trans anymore. No one actually wants to be that. It's not something you just wake up and decide to be every day. And when I ended up meeting my teacher who helped me, it felt weird and it felt different because I wasn't used to this love and appreciation of being my inner self, of being truly Dylan. And when he told me that wasn't okay, I thought it was because that's what you see in school. You would I got bullied for my entire school years of being just different, and which caused me to have severe mental health issues of just depression and anxiety, to where I felt like I had to ask myself every day as soon as I woke up, like, is today any different? What's the point? And just, you shouldn't have to experience that at such a young age. You're supposed to be full of life and ready to create a future for yourself. And I think that's why for the school system, we have to talk about these things at such a young age, starting at kindergarten. Like, it's okay if you feel more masculine or feminine. It's okay if you like boys or girls. It's your life. It's no one else that can live it except you. And I think that's what we kind of have to learn of. Everybody has an opinion, but their opinion should matter to you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing those stories and those experiences. Very sobering. And I think that they reveal what not thriving looks like, which helps us also to understand the shape of what thriving might look like. And so it takes a lot of generosity and bravery to share those stories. And thank you. And Sage, I wonder if you could come and answer this question first. And this is related. So when you think about yourself as a whole person, Sage, in school, out of school, at home, on the streets, wherever, what does it take for you to thrive?
So I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. And as like talking about my whole person, I also want to acknowledge the privileges that I move through the world with, right? I'm a mixed Black woman. I have a white mother. Although I am trans, I'm cis assumed, I'm cis passing, but we're trying to move away from the word of cis passing to cis assumed. Um, and I was able to transition at a young age. I've had access to hormones and doctors that I've needed since the beginning of my transition. So I just want to clarify that. Um, but, at home, what I needed was, my parents got divorced at a very young age, and the only Black person who was in my family no longer lived with me. And it felt really hard because I don't look like my mother. I don't live like my mother. I don't move through the world like my mom. And at home, it sometimes became hard to thrive because the person who does love you and the person who wants to take care of you cannot understand you in your fullness. And she's cis on top of that. So she could not understand my identity as trans. And being trans is a very isolating experience because it's something that only other trans people can understand. Um, so at home, despite how much my mom loved me, there were definitely things that made it really, really, really difficult for me, which led to me leaving home at 16. Um, And in school, I I faced so many micro like aggressions. And in middle school, I was suspended 7 times, a combination of out of school suspension and in school suspension. Um, I was, always punished when violence was taken against me. I was suspended when I was attacked and called a faggot by 6 kids who told me I was too gay, and they threw shoes at my head and beat me up, and I was caught on video telling them to get the off of me, and I was suspended for using, for using curse words, and nobody else was suspended. Nobody else was punished. Um, I was accused by a religious teacher and 2 students who had deep issues with me of performing oral sex on a water bottle. I was 12 years old. I was 11 years old, and I was suspended for that. There were a lot of things around my identity because I've always been very outspoken and very vocal about who I am that were weaponized against me, and it really was because teachers had a problem with me. I was called a man by a fellow student in a history classroom, and I was sent to an office, and I couldn't return to the classroom. There were a lot of things that I had to deal with simply because other people could not understand my identity, but they could understand where the hate of my identity came from. So in school and outside of school, I needed to be around people who looked like me. I needed to be around people who saw me, who loved me. And that's, where I live now. I live in a house full of people of color. We're all Black and Latino. And, it's just, I've never felt this seen. I've never felt this loved. Um, I've always tried to surround myself with my chosen family. So being around my chosen family, being around people who look like me and understand me, and engaging in work with organizations like NBJC is really what allows me to thrive and to exist and to experience joy. And I never really prioritized my joy before doing the work surrounding thriving with NBJC because I wasn't ever told that my joy mattered. I was never told that I should be able to simply exist happily and joyfully. I just always knew that I wasn't going to be able to because I wasn't white and because I wasn't cis and because I wasn't straight. I never knew that I deserved that. The way that I had seen it was the world's going to be harder for you because of who you are. Um, and I always wanted to change that, but I never understood that I deserved that. Um, so yes, that's my answer. I try to keep it succinct, but let me know if you need me to expand on anything.
Dylan, would you be willing to jump in after Sage? Sage, thank you so much.
Yes. I feel that to thrive, it took me pretending to be something I'm not for so long. I felt that, being trans, you have to live multiple lives. And I think I had 3 of them of, me being who I was at home, and then at school, and then with friends of, okay, these are 3 roles that I have to play 24/7 all the time. And it was exhausting because it was like, when you're trans in front of your family, you have to pretend to be something you're not. And as you have to hear the dead names and the pronouns that you do not feel that you represent as, it slowly kills you inside. But you can't say anything because you're too scared of what if. And then you go to school, and depending on the school that you go to, you may be able to pass it on. But then I think for my case at my school, I went to a performing arts school, which was very self-independent. So even when your parents came, you were the one doing the talking and telling what you did and how you were passing. And I ended up having to, my mom ended up finding out that I was trans, not by me though. I had a principal who was part of the LGBT community. She was a lesbian and married and everything. And she outed me to my mother. And I had told my entire teachers and principal, please do not call me Dylan. She does not know yet because I do not know where this will go if she does know. But my principal felt the need to out me anyways. And I have felt that my life had just crushed because it was like, I can't play these roles anymore. it was becoming difficult. I was looked at differently, as if I was disgusted for so long. And being young, you're going to take that personally. And I had already looked at myself in the mirror as if I wasn't good enough. So then to see somebody else do it, especially the person that you called family, that you spent your time with, that was supposed to have your back, do that too, it made it even worse. And you just question life even more of, is this really worth it? And I didn't think I had people really to go to in that case, because I didn't really know any trans people. Because I want to bounce off of what Sage said, it's so isolating because no one can really understand, because it's a process. It's not just, okay, I come out and that's it. It's I come out, I do hormones, I do surgery, and even after that, it's still, you have to come out so many times of, I'm he, him, I'm she, her, whatever you identify as. And I felt that I wasn't living until I found my friends that I have now, and the girlfriend that I have now, because it's that chosen family. Even if they're not trans, they're there for everything, and they know you more than blood does. And they always remind me how important I am to them, and it's the little things that matter. So I feel as if to thrive, sometimes you need that little push from somebody else to pick you up when you're not able to pick yourself up.
Gabby, would you be willing to jump in next?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Personally, for me, I feel like thriving, like we all talk about our chosen family. I do feel like we do need to lean on people sometimes in order to help us uplift ourselves. But at the same time, I feel like it also takes letting go. Because personally, for me, when I was a freshman in high school, I came to the school, started my whole clique, my friend group, whatever. And and then two of them identified as bi. And then there was this other friend. He was completely toxic, but that's besides the point. And so one of them was like, Gabby, I thought you were gay. And I was like, what do you mean? I just had a boyfriend like last week. What do you mean? And she's like, not gay, bi. And then, she will always make the joke and be like, Gabby's gay for me, guys. And I'm just like, can you stop? Like, and I feel like personally they just put a toxic strain on my mentality. Like, just how people just can just crush your spirit and you mentally, and that just completely confines who you are as a person. I feel like with them, it was always walking on eggshells, and then they would always be trying to tell me what I am and what I'm not. And I feel like, can I figure out who I am first before you try to tell me who I am? And then so I've always had just a small group of people ever since elementary school. She's actually in the back now, my best friend. But I feel like you need to stick to the people who accept you for who you are. And I feel like I couldn't become myself until I finally let go of the people who try to tell me who I am. And I can't figure out who I am for myself. So when I finally let them go and I appreciate and embrace the people who also embrace me for who I am, then I finally actually discover who I am. And then I could thrive. Thriving to me means to be fully happy. And I feel like now where I am, with the community that I have, with the friends that I have, I'm fully happy. And I'm appreciated for that.
Y'all gonna make me cry. Um, but for me, when I think about my thriving as a whole person, I think the first time where I felt like I was thriving in my life was when I got to college. And that was when I got to Howard, on Howard's very Black campus. And I think it had to do with the fact that it was an all Black space. At Howard, everything is Black, okay? We could be in math class talking about a white philosopher. Somehow we're gonna make it Black. And that was very affirming for me. That was like that like set the ground, that it was a safe space for me in terms of my Blackness. But my queerness was not really the case at Howard. There were a lot of opportunities that Howard had to showcase Black queer people. People like Lucy Diggs Slow, people like Victoria Kirby York at NBJC now, where they could have highlighted a bunch of Black queer people, but they chose not to. But I think that again, my thriving, where it came from was the fact that one, I did have a lot of Black representation. I myself sought out Black queer representation, and I also had a lot of chosen family around me. I had friends, and yeah. So I think that the big thing that I just took out of it was the environment that I was in really did help me to thrive. I was learning a lot about Black queerness. I was also seeing Black queerness every day on campus, and seeing like powerful people do very powerful things. And so that was just very affirming. And yeah, so I think that if that could be replicated in any other environment, so even if you are in an all Black environment, finding ways to integrate queerness into Blackness, because they are the same thing. Blackness is queerness, queerness is Blackness. They don't exist without each other. Actually, when I was at Howard, we started a slogan. Well, we didn't start it, but we adopted a slogan, as queer as it is Black. And it was in hopes that Howard one day would be as queer as it was Black, that it would be acknowledged as queer as it was Black. And I have the same hope for the world, so.
This is beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, y'all. And so just for this piece, I'm hoping to get really specific additional things that educators can do that can advance thriving for students, or, you know, if you have more to add, specific things that educators have done that have gotten in the way of thriving, just to flesh out our framework for what we're looking for or trying to avoid. And I wonder, Dylan, would you be willing to get us started on this question?
Yes. I think for my personal experience, I think the first thing that educators should do is, I know that we always start when you enter class, you always say, you know, my name is, et cetera, and you go on from there. I think, and from what my teachers used to do, is we would do a weekly check-in of how are you feeling? It's never about the schoolwork. It's never anything. It's personally how you are doing. Because I think in high school mainly, because you go through a lot of emotions because of the hormones that you're experiencing, and you're gonna have these relationships and friendships that are gonna work and they're not gonna work. You're gonna have a lot going on, and you're not really gonna be able to focus on school because you're too much thinking of what you're focusing on in your social life, because that's what you're trying to build right now. And so I think for educators, it's more so we're not gonna come to you all the time saying, well, at home this happened, and then when my friends, they left and did this. I think it's more so, if you see something that's wrong and you could tell something's wrong, don't ignore it. Go see what it is. Because I think for my school, they always taught us, you know, use your voice. Your voice is the most important thing that you have. Because, you know, closed mouths don't get fed. You can't help yourself if you're not going to say anything. And if you see something that's not okay, you need to be able to go and make sure, because you never know what that person is going through personally. And even a simple, you know, how are you doing? I'm there for you is better than nothing at all. And for educators, I think they feel that, you know, grades and everything are the most important thing, when it's really not. You know, grades isn't always gonna be something that somebody looks for. And when it comes to school, you're gonna learn regardless. You're gonna learn in school, out of school, but I think you have to learn, you know, about yourself, because they're not gonna teach you about the outside world. And it's already difficult enough. You have to do that alone, because you have to learn to be an adult. You have to learn to pay your bills and do all these things in a society that's not very supportive. So the best thing you could teach them is, you know, be there for one another as best as you can. Because, you know, that test that's on Friday, I'm going to forget about it by like next week anyway. I'm going to forget what the answer to letter A is, but I'm going to remember if my teacher asked me if I was okay or not. Because I remember my teachers would always use my anxiety and depression against me. And I still remember that to this day, but I can't remember that one thing on that test that I took from a month ago. So I think as an educator, as you always tell us, you know, the mind is so powerful, but the mind is also so deceiving, because your mind can always go against you. And that's the thing of the little things matter. Because if I'm getting bullied, I'm going to fall into a deep depression and anxiety, and I'm not going to care about my grades. I'm not going to care to come to school, So how do you expect me to retain every information that you give me if I can't focus? So I think you should put mental health and physical health before anything, because you can't expect a good outcome if you're not feeling great enough or feeling motivated to do it at all.
If I could, I'd love to add something to that point, Dylan. I've never been a good student. And I think that that comes as a surprise, not to toot my own horn, but to toot it a little bit, right? I think that that comes to I think that that comes as a surprise to a lot of the people that I work with, because um, how are not only articulate I try to be, but the kind of work that I do and the ways that I show up, I've always showed up more for my community and outside of school than I've ever shown up inside of school. And I think I'm smart, but school has never been a space where I have necessarily excelled, because I never felt safe at school. I don't even feel safe in college. I'm leaving my college. And I actually have a meeting with my dean tomorrow to talk about the violence that I've endured here. I was called Nefertiti by a white teacher. I was told that gentrification is investment in disenfranchised communities by private investors when I'm from DC and I know the violent reality of gentrification. Um, School has never been a place where I really felt supported, seen, and cared for. But the work that I do outside of school, Team Mag, is really like what has kept me honestly like alive and thriving. And grades most definitely do not reflect our full worth. And too often we focus on developing those hard skills and we forget to develop our soft skills. I worked with the Aspen Institute throughout high school. When we were building policy recommendations for social, emotional, and academic development. And so often students who find themselves excelling in school when they enter the workforce or when they enter college and they've been focused and treated like only math and the kind of scores that they receive on tests matter, they find themselves ill-equipped with the social skills that they need to collaborate and that they need to learn and that they need to take care of themselves. We're taught so often that we have to put out and reach some test, like, and reach some number to secure some white man paperwork that's going to somehow justify our existence in the like in the corporate world that already doesn't care about us, right? But I think that something that also was really harmful was just growing up as a trans person, as a queer person, and everything in school being so gendered. Like boys line up on this side of the classroom, girls line up on this side of the classroom. Y'all know I wanted to go line up with the girls, but because they were my friends and that's how I felt and that's who I identified. But and I was also the type of kid that would do it. Like, I'm the type of kid that would get up and go line up with the girls. And then the teacher would be like, no, like, you can't do that, or da 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 da. And then it'd be a whole thing, right? But there's so much gendered violence that occurs in school as well. In front of my math class in 8th grade, a boy groped my breast to expose that my bra was empty and said, you know, oh, I knew they were fake, something like that. And this happened in front of a classroom, and no one did anything because I was a trans woman. If I was a cis woman, would something have been done? I don't know, but I know that nothing was done because I was a trans woman. And so many people didn't protect me because they didn't feel the need to, but they also were possessed with like a level of hate that just allowed them to excuse that kind of violence. I just always say, like, you know, if you're wearing blue, green, or red, you know, stand up on the right side of the classroom. If you're wearing yellow, purple, and pink, and and just trying to eliminate gender in ways that can be harmful, because to the little trans baby who doesn't want to put themselves in danger or start a problem or is already confused about like themselves, those kind of things can have like much deeper impact than we know. And kids are so smart and kids are so accepting, and we really do teach them to hate each other. We teach them to try to get in such a high proximity to the cisness and to whiteness and to straightness that they are not born with wanting. And it's through teachers saying, oh, that's wrong, and teachers saying no to like this. And, growing up, I kind of transitioned, detransitioned, and transitioned again, because when I was a little kid, I used to go to school and play with the girls and play dress up, and I used she, her pronouns. And I was always little Hermione when we played Harry Potter. I don't know why we played that game, but it wasn't until people's parents and teachers started saying, I don't like that. I don't like that that's what this child is doing and what their parents are allowing them to do. So I think that teachers need to stop being so gendered, and that there needs to be a better response to the kind of violence that queer students experience in schools that teachers honestly encourage and just allow.
Period stage. I'm gonna add two things that I think teachers could be doing. To foster a sense of community, a sense of selfhood, all dimensions, under thriving, things that queer students, well, really anybody needs to in order to thrive. I would definitely say offer a GSA, a Gay Straight Alliance. Students can essentially, or queer students, LGBTQ students can band together to start their own Gay Straight Alliance on their campuses. And sometimes though, in different areas of the country, it's not really like allowed. But there are definitely resources out there that will help you to start those. And it's on Glisten. I'm actually just gonna post a link in here as well, to a resource guide between Glisten and NBJC. It's the Erasure and Resilience Report, the experience of LGBTQ students of color. And it really outlines in more detail, kind of what we're talking about here in this panel. So I would definitely say, one, definitely start a GSA. Two, also integrate a inclusive curriculum. And like I said, how we were talking about Howard earlier, about how we could be taking a calculus class, but somehow somebody Black is going to show up in that calculus class with Howard. You can do the same thing with queerness. There are ways to integrate queerness, Blackness into almost everything. There are ways to validate everybody's identity if you try hard enough, if you take the extra step. So I'm just going to post that resource in the chat.
Also, just really quickly, Justin, if anybody in the audience is interested in starting a GSA, I started one that was not under Glisten in high school, and the language that we decided to use was the Gender and Orientation Alliance. It is a little less binary and it's a little bit more inclusive. Instead of gay, straight, the Gender and Orientation Alliance. So that doesn't have, like, I'm just saying, like, to be a little bit more inclusive and expansive with your languaging. So yeah.
Okay, so I feel like the way I feel about schools, I feel like it's too normalized to have gender division in schools. Like back when I was in middle school, there was this one kid that I went to elementary school with. He would always hang out with the girls. Those were his friends. And then every time he would try to go over, because they would have two different sides. The boys stay on this side, the girls stay on that side. And every time he would try to hang out with them, our assistant principal always come like, "No, you can't be over here. You have to go back over to the boys." And I'm just like, let him do what he wants to do. What's he doing? Who's he hurting? I'm just sitting here like, okay, go off, I guess. But I feel like we need to denormalize the division of genders, like Sage, Justin, and Dylan said. And I feel like we also need to stop like putting school, like education is important, but the stuff that they're teaching us is not gonna, sometimes it's not gonna matter a minute from now, it's not gonna matter a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's a Zora Neale Hurston quote, by the way. But I feel like you're teaching me about stuff, like it's so repetitive and it's not even the stuff that we need to be learning. I feel like it shouldn't be offered as a separate class. It should just be included into the curriculum. Like I've taken a Black theater class. Why can't that also, oh, that was Maya? I'm so sorry. I thought that was Zora Neale Hurston. But, yeah, so I feel like it also just needs to be included in the curriculum. Like it shouldn't just be separate. Like it should be normalized to just talk about it. So yeah, that's how I feel.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, y'all. We have a little bit of time to take questions from the audience and respond to them. You've really outlined a beautiful framework for how people can move forward to increase possibilities for thriving for Black and trans, queer, non-binary, same gender loving, and other gender and sexuality expansive young people. There are some questions sort of around and in the chat. I have to kind of pop back up. And if anybody wants to throw their questions at the very bottom so that they're fresh and we can see them, that would be helpful as well. Yeah. Okay, so I see from Mimi, as a gay woman teaching in a community where homophobia is apparent, how do I navigate opening the space to introduce my identity in a normalized way? Sometimes I fear that disclosing my personal life, I have to hide it or lie. Students have asked me if I have a boyfriend and I just say no. I hear students call each other faggot, but they don't even know why that is so hurtful. So I'm not angry about it. I'm just sad and don't know how to confidently create the space to discuss anything LGBTQIA plus related. Oof. Yeah, it's serious. What are your thoughts, panel?
Personally, for me in my school, I feel like it could go one of two ways. It depends on if your students respect you and your confidence in you. Because I feel like if they don't see the confidence in you, they'll just pick out all your insecurities and vulnerabilities and use that to break you. So I feel like Mr. James, the earth science teacher, he's new. And you know, kids in school, I go to a majority male school, they'll call each other faggots. Anything you do, that's gay. And I feel like it's just used as a slur too much. And then Mr. James is not one to tolerate the disrespect. So that's actually how he ended up coming out to the students. I feel like somebody called him a bati man one time, and then he was like, well, I actually am gay. So thank you for getting that out the way. And then we also have our living environment teacher, Dr. Watson. He's also openly gay. And then I guess because he graded a certain type of way, students didn't like him. And then they would use his sexuality in order to break him apart. Like, he didn't really let that affect him. So I guess it depends on your mentality, your comfort about, and how comfortable you are with your sexuality. But they will always call him a bati man and be like, oh, Fish Watson. And I'm just sitting here like, how are you going to use someone's identity against them just because you don't like them? Like, that's something that you cannot control. And I feel like it's just the students, but if it's also the people around you, then you just have to get more comfortable with talking about, like, maybe you just address some of the people who are making these statements and explain how that's offensive and how that's hurtful and how that also impacts other people. Because some people are just oblivious and ignorance is bliss, but it's just so.
I would say, to your point, Gabby, that, you know, NBJC has the Words Matter toolkit. And I think that this, you know, telling students really the impact that their words have gives them a level of information that also permits a level of responsibility, and that forces them in that choice to continue using harmful language every time to be confronted with the fact that that language really does have real world impact. I mean, we can't stop kids from, you know, calling me a faggot, calling me, you know, all the words that they're going to call me. There's nothing that I can say to stop them from using that. And of course it hurts, and of course it causes violence. The only thing that I think that I can do is to educate them in the ways that that translates into real world violence. So sitting down with these kids and letting them know how harmful of a word that is and how that word has been utilized to justify violence against gay people, violence against queer people throughout history. And I think that, you know, depending on your student population, something that has never really I say it's never made sense to me, but it makes plenty of sense to me. And I don't think we have the space necessarily to have this full conversation, but the relationship between queerness and race, and the, you know, the similarities in the utilization of queerness based hate to, you know, promote racial violence, and that, these are two forms of oppression that have been designed by white, cis, straight people to oppress anything that is outside of that norm. And I think that really breaking it down to our fellow babies and to our fellow Black and brown babies, that this is the same language that's used to hurt them. This is the same language that is used to hurt their parents, that this is the same language that is used to disenfranchise and to dismantle our, communal strength and our communal power, that it will only force them to, recognize the fact that they are doing the same thing with each word that they let out of their mouth. And it's really unfortunate because I wish that it wasn't a white person that I was, about to bring the theory into from Jane Butler, but, that we try to perform gender in ways that give us a closer proximity to the norm. And that means that the straight Black male has to call me a faggot and has to call me a tranny so that he can make himself closer to the norm, to push me down as his Black trans sister, so it's unfortunate that that's the truth, but we have to educate our babies on the ways that language only supports the power dynamics that further disenfranchise them. And that until we are all free, no one's free. Until there are no trans women being murdered in the streets, there's going to be no equality, there's going to be no peace, there's going to be no freedom. So as long as we are using the privileges that we have to disenfranchise our siblings who look like us, who live like us, who experience like us, there's no chance of us being free. There's no chance of us being able to live and to experience joy, because at the end of the day, it's all the white man and he don't want to see us win. So that's on that.
Wow. Yes, 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 yes. I'm going to add a teacher perspective, a teacher and school administrator perspective, and I see some comments in the chat related to this. One of the first considerations for a practitioner who is trying to make decisions about disclosure and visibility is safety, because there are states where you have no protections, and you have to take into consideration what your personal threshold for safety and exposure is. And that's really not for anyone else to decide but you, no judgment. I think the other thing to take into consideration, if you want to, and a lot of us do, is visibility. When we are out, it has a palpable impact on our students who are figuring out who they are and exploring identity and coming to know themselves. Their mental health and well-being can be drastically improved by seeing a person who is like them out and proud in their life. So our visibility actually is critically important. And as you've heard from this panel today, it's been, in many cases, the people who were out and proud and visible and, showed up and showed out in all of their fullness, who helped these young people to see their way to thriving. That, hopefully y'all can hear me, my microphone's cutting out. So that matters as well. And then there's a piece of this that's about the ongoing work of change, making change, building coalition, engaging people in, policy evolution. All of these things are part of the work that we're undertaking together. And so getting involved, being in coalition with others, finding ways to advance, the agenda in your locale is really, really important. And again, it's a very personal decision that you have to make.
Yeah, can I add something? I think when I read the question, how do I navigate opening the space to introduce my identity in a normalized way? What it brought up for me was inviting in. And I'm actually gonna, just send the toolkit. There it is, boom. But it just made me think about inviting in, and inviting in is essentially where it places the onus of inviting somebody into your life, like onto the other person almost. Like, it's not like, gay people essentially shouldn't have to come out. Like, we just should not have to do that. It shouldn't be a normal thing. Like, straight people don't have to come out. You come out the womb and, people just automatically assume that you're straight, ill. And that just shouldn't be the case. But there's more information about it in the toolkit. And then I'm sure that somebody else can give us some deeper perspective.
Also just really quickly about inviting in, another way to begin that conversation super easily. I don't want to say easily, but super quickly is, if you're a teacher and you're communicating with your fellow teachers or your students, making sure that at the bottom of your email signature that you have your name, hi, Professor Sage Dolan Sandrino, pronouns she, her. People are going to be like, like, what does that mean, Miss Dolan Sandrino? Well, that means that I use she, her gender pronouns to identify myself. What pronouns do you use? And, although, okay, Dr. Dolan Sandrino, Dr. Dolan Sandrino, what do pronouns mean? Well, NBJC also has a toolkit on gender pronouns, and we have a comic with Cartoon Network. I was about to say the National Black Justice Coalition. With Cartoon Network, which is a perfect way to introduce this into your classroom if it is safe to do so in a very child-friendly way that really breaks it down for them. And just kind of starting these discussions when you come back from break, when you come back from summer break, when you are teaching a new class, going around the room and saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, I use these pronouns, I'm this years old, and, just normalizing it in our everyday conversation. Because although, yes, to your eyes, I may look female, I may use they, them pronouns, I may use non-binary pronouns, or I may use masculine, traditionally masculine pronouns, right? He, him, and that we need to understand that gender expression and gender identity are two completely different things. And that's the same thing with gender identity and sexuality, completely two different things. And although they may influence each other, they are completely independent of each other as well. So just trying to find ways to simply introduce these things into conversation can start as easy as putting the pronouns in the end of your email bio, and then having that conversation with your students in the classroom. And those who really aren't open to it, they're going to go home, they're going to tell their parents, and guess what? The learning experience is going to be over right there. But those who have the opportunity, the privilege, and the safety to explore it, and who are interested in it, they're going to go on Cartoon Network and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, Steven Universe characters are talking about this. Boom, we're in it. So that's one thing I would say.
We have time for one or two last thoughts before we close, related to what Black LGBTQ plus and same gender loving youth and young adults need in order to thrive in school. Okay. All right. Well, Dylan, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just to bounce off what everybody has said. I think in personal experience, it truly depends on the power that you have over your students. Because I know for some of my teachers, they didn't take anything from any student because everybody's gonna have an opinion and say some things. But I think for the younger generation, we still don't know enough, because with these white, dominant genders and sexes, they're gonna be able to not allow you to learn things that you need that are important. Because we don't have these sex classes. Even like if you take, use the example of sex ed, they teach you don't have sex because then you can get these diseases and then that's it. And then even as a younger generation, you tell us don't do something, we're still gonna do it anyway because you told us not to do it. So I think it really depends on how you go about it. You can, show a video that'll talk about, pronouns and sex and everything to get the minds going of the questions that students may ask, but you also might open a new door for a student to be able to come out and trust you and tell you about their own experiences, to where you can create that closer bond between you and your students. Because I know that's what my teacher did. She came from the South and she told us, she had a boyfriend, but then she actually liked a girl, and that became our favorite teacher because we were able to relate to her so much. Even if she was white or, mixed, we still able to go to her because she opened that door for all of us. And we even told her about our own experiences of, I'm trans. And I was even able to educate her and show her some videos where we ended up using them in classes to teach, this is how the trans community is seen, this is how they feel, this is what goes on, and to go on from so forth. You can find videos all over, YouTube and little things, and you can add that to your lesson. And as they watch it, they're going to ask questions of, what are pronouns? What's the difference between sex and gender? And you can go from there. And you can even tell them, hey, I'm maybe like non-binary, I'm lesbian, I'm this. And, some students aren't going to appreciate that because of what their parents said, because growing up, they had a sense of, okay, this is wrong. But they don't know why, because their parents just said it. You're going to believe what your parents say until there's a because to it. And then you can use your own mind to go off from there. Because as you get older, you're going to have your own opinions. And as in your generation, you're going to go against things that you feel that are wrong. So it truly is how you want to go about it and how much power you have over these students. But there is always a way, and you shouldn't feel scared to open up, because these are the students that you are going to spend your year with. So it's best to create a bond and be true to yourself instead of kind of distancing yourself because you're afraid of what they might think, when truly you might just open up a door for them to even become closer to you and create this bond with you that you never thought would happen.
Mic drop. All right. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to have everyone here today to begin to learn. We hope that everyone in the audience will do the work of becoming trustworthy, checking in, building an expansive, representative, reflective curriculum, and being a learner. We hope that you will tune in next week to hear from the practitioners as they respond to these panelists' observations and offer their own perspectives on thriving while Black and LGBTQ plus and same gender living in schools. You can register for that and the panel after that at nbjc.org/Black educators. We are so glad that you joined us tonight, and we hope that you have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Okay, panelists, that is a wrap. All of our attendees have left the room. I want to thank you all for your participation. It was a phenomenal conversation, and for some reason, I feel like we need to follow up with that list of resources. All of those are available on the NBJC website. Okay, so and our follow, and I know we forgot Twitter handle. So if you'll drop those in the chat or any way that people want to connect with you, I can include that. Kia and I can include that on all of our panelists who all of our people who register for the conversation, with the link to the recording and the different resources that we have available. Over 208 people registered for this talk tonight. So you'll be exposing this conversation. Will be able to help a lot of people. So again, thank you so much. Payments will be submitted tomorrow, and you can expect them by the end of the week. If you elected for the direct deposit, and then the mail is usually about a week to two to see that in your bank account. Do y'all have any questions or anything from us before we disperse to this evening? No, Kia, have anything for these awesome young adults?
I would like to say thank you so much. I hope that we can do something like this again. Please let me know how you felt, about this experience. I'd love to hear your feedback. And actually, Alexis, can we also add the feedback link to the email that we sent out to the registrants?
Yeah, the feedback link, the link to the recording, as well as the resources. Those are my three that we'll have to remember.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been extraordinary. What a
Yeah,
pleasure. What an honor.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. I definitely, if we have the option, Dylan and Gabby, I would love to catch up in person. I don't know, but y'all, that might be several months away. But yeah, I enjoyed y'all a lot.
Well, let's keep in touch virtually until we can see one another in person. Y'all have each other's emails. Go ahead, Sage.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yes, Justin and I are already connected, but Gabby and Dylan, I'd love to connect with y'all. And if y'all ever need anything from me, just let me know. My Instagram is thrift with 2 H's, like the thrift store. So just connect with me there.
Yeah, same. Put mine in the chat.
But it was nice talking to y'all. And at first I was like, dang, I just feel like I'm such a baby here. And this is big fish swimming, but this is a good combo.
You brought so much to the table, really, you did.
You did, Gabby, and that's all. Like, everyone need to hear that perspective from a student. I don't even know if they realized that you were only in the 11th grade, but for someone living that experience, definitely brought a dynamic voice to the table.
Yes, yes. And Dylan, I'm so glad you could make it. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you for having me. I was very nervous.
We couldn't tell.
Right, I could not
It
tell.
helps not seeing all the people, right? I mean, you can see the chat, but it also helps just like you're in conversation with one another. So that takes a lot of the pressure off of seeing like 40 faces sitting there looking at you. Like, it was good. Touched a lot of people.
Agreed. And I want to say, Alexis, thank you so much, because this would not have been possible without your support and guidance and technical assistance and communications and all of it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
My pleasure.
Alexis Snow.
My pleasure. Well, have a great afternoon, and for y'all that's still in LA and or California, and evening to the rest of us folks where it's dark
Yes.
already. So we will see, hopefully you'll be in attendance for the next panel next Monday to see what the practitioners have to say. But if not, I thank you wholeheartedly for your contributions to tonight's conversation, and be in touch if you have any questions regarding urban teachers or the recordings or anything in between. Looking forward to staying connected. All right.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.
Bye.